My wife's sister passed away in September of this year. And her friend Uti came and said, I can feel your pain. So my wife was a little miffed, and she said, no, you can't. How can you feel my pain? You haven't done it. You haven't been there. So this begs the question, can you feel the pain of another person? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, and honored guest. Empathy is a way in which you enter the other person's brain and figure out what's going on. What is empathy? It is walking in another person's shoes, figuring out what they're thinking, what they're going to do next, their emotions, and their compassion. Now the psychologists say there are three types of empathy. There's the cognitive empathy, in which you get into the other person's brain. There's the emotional empathy, in which you get into the other's emotions, and you observe and understand their emotions, what they're thinking, what they're doing. And there's compassionate empathy. Now this is one in which you not only do the forerunners, the getting in the brain, understanding the emotions, but you do something about it. These are the ones who do the soup line. They're often found in nurses, school teachers, doctors, not lawyers, excuse me. Fraudulent slip of the tongue there. So there are three kinds, and there are little tricks of the trade in which you can do. First of all, you kind of look at a person, gaze into their eyes. After all, the face itself is the most exposed, normally, part of the body, and it's an area which signals a lot of information. We are actually hardwired to have empathy. That's how we got to where we are today, over evolution. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that up here there are two little mechanisms in the brain, right here, and they are called the supramarginal gyrus. And those allow you to enter into another person's brain and find out what's going on and view their emotions. You also have up here what they call mirror neurons. What is a mirror neuron? Just like the word says, a mirror, in which you can mirror what the other person is doing. Excuse me. A couple of you yawned. Why? Because that goes to a different part of the brain, into the amygdala, the basic part of the brain. And a lot of these actions you don't have control over. Your facial expressions, some of those you don't have control over. Some of these great interrogators will look at a person, interrogate them, ask them a question. They don't expect an answer, a verbal answer, but they can read the face and know, did you kill somebody? And read the signs on the face. You can also read the signs of grief, little horseshoe right here in the brow. So what does all that tell you? Well, empathy, according to the 14th Dalai Lama, says, yes, he feels the pain, but just for a macromillisecond. He can actually feel the pain of another person. He admitted that. And some people can. In fact, some people are overly empathic. They call them empaths, by the way. And those people tend to, it's like maybe a nurse who gets kind of, they go home and say, I'm just burned out, because they're overly empathetic to that person. So I maintain we're actually having a crisis on empathy. I remember the old days, old days to some of you, and I remember that we talked a lot, and we empathized a lot, and we understood each other, and we tried to understand the other person, and tried to help them. This was empathy. And today, with the millenniums now on their iPhones and going wild, they don't have that personal contact. And I think they're a little lacking. And our school systems have taken out the arts. I think it should be, you know, right now it's STEM. It's science, technology. Some countries it's engineering, and then math. I say put an A in there. Instead of STEM, have STEAM. What does the A stand for? It stands for the arts. Why? Because with arts, you can actually go to a safe place and be creative. And if you develop your creative skills, you're developing your empathy. All the great people that you heard of, I mean, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and here's one you haven't heard of, Hilary Swank. Hilary Swank you've heard of, she's a movie star. She got 2 Oscars. How did she get her first Oscar? By empathy. What did she do? She pretended to be a transvestite. She went down the streets of New York and she shaved her hair off, and she tried to be a transvestite in that slum area of New York for 30 days. And then she goes back and she wins the Oscar on Boys Don't Cry. So empathy is an amazing part of our repertoire, and Toastmasters. We use it all the time when we talk to people. Look at people in the eye, we do the active listening concept, we listen very intently. We not only listen for the content, we listen for the emotion. So we're actually looking at the person, an emotion, making a judgment on that. Yeah, I'm going to take that word judgment out of there, sorry about that. We're not making a judgment, and we don't make a judgment at all. That's the idea of empathy. We listen, we try to understand what the person is saying, and then we react to it. No judgment. So the 14th Dalai Lama finally said that empathy, love, and compassion are not a luxury. They are a necessity. Thank you.